In our advancing society, time must be our concern. For what we plan now, so will our future be. And in education above all else, we must plan. For in such planning rests Florida's future. But will the university be ready to meet his ambitions? Will his parents have been sufficiently interested in his future to have concerned themselves with the needs of their universities?
We regret to inform you that we are unable to accept your application to...
We'd like to accept you. Indeed, we'd like to offer more courses, more sections, but we just don't have the space. That, together with lack of professors.
But what happened? How come my parents or the state or the university didn't look ahead?
Looking ahead, planning ahead, that's just what the university has been doing. That's the reason for studies such as this one.
What would the young man have found beyond these gates had he been accepted?
He looked inside.
In the early 1950s, the nation recognized in its midst a social movement called Beat Generation. A novel titled On the Road became a bestseller, and its author, Jack Kerouac, became a celebrity, partly because he'd written a powerful and successful book, but partly because he seemed to be the embodiment of this new generation. So here he is, Jack Kerouac.
I wrote the book because we're all gonna die. In the loneliness of my life, my father dead, my brother dead, my mother far away, my sister and my wife far away. Nothing here but my own tragic hands that once were guarded by a world, a sweet attention, that now are left to guide and disappear their own way into the common dark of all our death.
You know, I have some friends in Europe that never got called just because they're in Paris. Besides, you really ought to go to Paris. You'd love it.
Sure. What we do for money?
Well, you've managed somehow.
Oh, hey, look, I got to get going. I told John I'd see him about 7 o'clock. We've got to work out some scenes for the film. I'll see you as soon as we get through, about 9 o'clock, okay?
Well, don't be late.
Who, me? I'm never late. Here's your coffee.
Oh, thank you.
How's that thing coming?
Okay.
It looks like it's almost finished.
Almost.
Well, look, why don't we get going? There's no sense staying around here, and I'm sick of this place.
Okay.
All now around the world, are you ready for a
walking down the beach, looking absolutely great. I said, hey, Jim, come on over here. And Jim Morrison, God, what are you doing here in California? I thought you were going to New York. He said, no, I decided to stay here and write some songs. Write songs? Ah, he knew I was a keyboard player. I said, well, let me hear a song and sing one for me, or sit down here on the beach. And he started to sing Moonlight Drive. Let's swim to the moon. He was just the two of us, and he's just singing just like that. Let's climb through the tide. And I heard the lyrics to it. I thought, these are incredible. Man. This is just the best lyrics I've ever heard for rock and roll.
Let's swim to the moon. Let's climb through the tide.
Well, what do we call the man? And he said, I've got the name. This guy. He said, The Doors. I said, The Doors? I thought, that was the most ridiculous name I'd ever heard. I went, The Door. Oh, wait a minute. You mean like the doors in your head, huh? Opening up the doors in your mind. He said, yeah, exactly. Like Aldous Huxley's The Doors of Perception. Or William Blake's line, if the doors of perception were cleansed, man would see things as they truly are, infinite. I said, yeah, that's us, The Doors.
It's our turn to try. Park beside the ocean on our Moonlight Drive. Hello, I love you, won't you tell me your name? Hello, I love you, let me jump in your game. Hello, I love you, won't you tell me your name? Hello, I love you, let me jump in your game. When the summer's gone, morning found us calmly unaware. End of the night, end of the night, end of the night. Eyes have seen you, my eyes have seen you, my eyes have seen you. Stand in your door when we meet inside. You can show me some more, show me some more, show me some more. Now once I had a little game, I like to crawl back in my brain. I think you know the game I mean. Well, I mean the game. Stop going insane! Oh! Such a trip, she was hardly there, but I loved her just the same. She's a 20th century fox.
In the spring of 1966, I took a late flight into Los Angeles, went directly to catch the last show at the Whiskey, where Love was playing. And during my conversations with Arthur Lee, he said, there's a band on the bottom of the bill that I really think you ought to stick around and hear. And I had a very high opinion of Arthur's opinion. So I stayed around, and there I saw the Doors. And I wasn't particularly impressed. I didn't hear any of the iconic songs that first evening. But I kept going back, and I went back 4 evenings. Now, the fourth evening I went back, everything just came together, and you just knew.
Holzman was seeking the new West Coast thing, and he was open to, he was a smart guy, and he liked Jim's words. He knew we were up to something.
Came back 2 or 3 times, came back with his wife, and said, boys, I'm going to sign you to Elektra Records.
You know, when I heard that we might be on Elektra Records, that was like heaven for me. And then when I heard that we were going to get Paul Rothchild to produce us, that was like it was meant to be, because he had produced all these albums that I listened to. And then we got Bruce Botnick, who had done the Love records, and Paul Butterfield band with Paul. So there was some fate involved, I think, in these decisions.
One of the things you do with an artist is you try and put yourself in their shoes. What is going to be the most important thing to this band? And I thought about it long and hard. And it was not to have the experience they had on Columbia. So how do you do that? And what I did was I guaranteed to record and release 3 albums that I swore would be released. And I offered to do it contractually, not just a handshake I could get out of, but to do it contractually. And I'd never done that, and I don't think anybody else had ever done that before, but we just did it. Because my job is to get the record made. My job is to put myself in the position of the artist and understand where they're coming from. And that's how the Doors happened. The Doors led to everything else.
Were you surprised that the Doors had such a lasting success?
No. No, and I'll tell you why. The Doors had never seen a studio, and the Doors had never seen Rothchild. Rothchild was my first choice for the producer. I needed someone who was as smart as they were, who was as musically educated as they were, and who could outtalk Jim and Ray particularly. The fact that he had been in jail for 8 months on a marijuana charge just added to the charm of it all. Rothchild didn't want to produce them, and he thought I had made an error in signing them. And I said, you know, I stuck by you through the entire jail experience. I really need you to do this one. You're the only one who can produce this group. Well, that got to Rothchild immediately. And he rehearsed them. And then suddenly, the day of the session, they walk into the studio. They had never been inside a studio before. Jim runs over to the classic U-47 microphone that looked like half of a very short bat. And he said, this is Frank Sinatra's microphone. He was a giant fan of Frank Sinatra. Suddenly he was at home. And they learned the studio in about 2 hours. And we never broke down a setup. And we made the record in about 7 days. At one point, Robbie Krieger wanted to bring in a wah-wah pedal, which distorts the sound in what was a very 1966, 67, 68 way, and I got a call from Rothchild, and he said, Robbie wants a wah-wah pedal, and I told him no. And Robbie said he wants to hear no from you, and Robbie got on the phone, and I said no. And he said, why? I said, because you have the cleanest architectural line of any group I have ever heard, and you don't want to make it temporal by bringing in something that we're not going to be sure is going to be current, I figure, 20 years from now. But I've always likened the musical line of the Doors to Bauhaus architecture. And you listen to the material 40 years later, and it is as current as it was then. And it was beautifully produced and recorded.
The End actually started out as a love song, a goodbye love song. This is the end, beautiful friend.
This is the end, beautiful friend.
Jim sang it to us a cappella, and we kind of went, whoa, okay, that's dark. And the whole long 10-minute middle section of poetry and all that stuff kind of evolved playing live, and we had sections where he could put in whatever he wanted while we would vamp.
At the Whiskey A Go-Go, Jim came up with this great part. And we'd never heard it before. It's the first time he ever did this. On stage, Whiskey A Go-Go, packed. And he had that aura about him that had just stopped the entire place. Everything had gone into just frozen moment in time. Nothing was going on except this. Densmore's drums and Robbie playing some sitar things, and Morrison says, the killer awoke before dawn.
The killer awoke awoke before dawn. He put his boots on. He took a face from the ancient gallery and he walked on down the hallway, baby. Came to a door. He looked inside. Father, yes, son, I want to kill you. Mother,